House Speaker Nancy Pelosi tells Democrats that they aren't leaving for Thanksgiving until they pass the Build Back Better bill. This after President Biden signed into law the $1.2 trillion infrastructure package. The House Freedom Caucus is inviting witnesses to testify on vaccine mandates. The witnesses and the Congress members are discussing the economic impacts, the constitutionality, and the safety of vaccine mandates. And the Astroworld death toll rises to 10, the latest victim a 9-year-old boy. Tune in to Deep Dive as we explore these topics and more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is telling Democrats that they won't have Thanksgiving break until they pass the Build Back Better bill. But before we get into that, let's first touch on the bill that has passed, the infrastructure bill. On Monday, President Biden signed into law a $1.2 trillion infrastructure package. The gathering marked a major legislative victory at the White House event that included lawmakers from both parties. The legislation will deliver $550 billion of new federal investments over 5 years. It includes money for roads, bridges, mass transit, and more. The package includes a $65 billion investment in improving the nation's broadband infrastructure and tens of billions of dollars for improving the electric grid, water systems, and building a nationwide network of plug-in electric vehicle charges. The bill first passed by the Senate in a 69-30 vote in August. It was ultimately passed by the House on November 5th. 13 Republican lawmakers backed the vote. Biden told guests at the signing ceremony, quote, "I truly believe that 50 years from now, historians are going to look back at this moment and say that is the moment America began to win the competition of the 21st century." Also in the bill, a new mandate to crack down on drunk drivers. Rolling out as early as 2026, new vehicles will have technology to detect and stop drunk drivers from starting up their vehicles.
And today's legislation will also make driving safer in America.
And a pilot program for mileage tax to study if it would be effective to tax drivers per mile to help pay for future infrastructure investments. And $47 billion to protect against extreme weather. Now, what about the next bill? Speaker Nancy Pelosi warning there won't be a Thanksgiving break until the Build Back Better bill is passed. According to the framework, the bill will create millions of good-paying jobs, enable more Americans to join and remain in the labor force, spur long-term growth, and set the country on course to meet its clean energy ambitions. Pelosi says she hopes the vote will happen before the weekend. But the spending bill has dropped a key requirement for the child tax credit. It no longer requires a Social Security number for the child tax credit. A provision in the Build Back Better Act would repeal the requirement. It would expand payments for children who are in the United States illegally. Researcher Stephen Camarota at the Center for Immigration Studies told Fox News illegal immigrants are able to receive benefits on behalf of their U.S.-born children, but the permanent elimination of the SSN requirement means that even illegal immigrants whose children are also illegally in the country can receive cash payments. Camarota estimates it would lead to $2.3 billion in payouts to illegal immigrants. The bill would also give child tax credits to parents who are unemployed, something key Senate Democrat Joe Manchin disagrees with. We reached out to the White House for comment but didn't hear back. Meanwhile, Republican lawmakers are raising concerns about Democrat spending plans in a new report, saying massive spending will hurt poor Americans the most. It says inflation is eating into the livelihoods of American families. It's causing them to fall further behind. The reckless spending must stop. Inflation is at a 31-year high. The report says it affects lower-income houses more because they spend a large portion of their income on food, housing, and transportation. Prices for all three are up significantly. High earners, on the other hand, spend a smaller percentage. Policy scholars from the Conservative Heritage Foundation also recently warned against Biden's social spending plan, saying it would add trillions to the national debt, make inflation worse, and hurt traditional energy businesses. But on Sunday, several top Biden officials disagreed, saying the bill might solve inflation instead of making it worse. And another area with economic impacts, vaccine mandates. That's according to the House Freedom Caucus hearing. Employers testifying at the hearing told the lawmakers that the vaccine mandates would have devastating impacts on small businesses and worsen the labor shortage. Others argued about the safety of the mandate. One of the witnesses was a medical doctor. She brought up the issue that federal vaccine mandates ignore natural immunity.
We actually have about 122, probably more than that, studies now affirming natural immunity. And the problem is we're still relying on the CDC for all of those recommendations. The only governor, there are a few governors who are not relying on the CDC's recommendations. They have been reluctant for some reason to keep track of any data on natural immunity. I can tell you I've diagnosed probably 30 to 40 breakthrough cases of COVID and 0 cases of reinfection.
Congressman Louis Gohmert, meanwhile, pointed to the fact that 2 of the 3 COVID-19 vaccines available in the U.S. are still only authorized for emergency use.
And these are the warning label. It comes, and it says COVID-19 vaccine, and it says for use under emergency use authorization. So here is all of the warnings. In other words, there are no warnings, and that's because of those words I just read, for emergency use authorization only, which means they don't have to give you the warnings.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene said she is against vaccine mandates because they violate medical freedom.
As a matter of fact, I consider them discrimination in the workplace. And it's also communism, absolute communism, that we would see the Biden administration force federal policy, force regulations through employers that violate their medical freedoms and put their lives at risk, such as the good doctor's been talking about. This is such a risk for people's health. They should be able to choose.
And what about vaccine mandates in the military? One state has been going up against the Pentagon. The Pentagon on Monday said it has the authority to require members of the National Guard to get vaccinated. That's after the Oklahoma National Guard's newly appointed commander refused to impose a vaccine mandate ordered by the Defense Department. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby told reporters that U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, quote, has the authorities he needs to require this vaccine across the force, including the National Guard. Kirby later added during a news briefing that it is a lawful order for a National Guardsman to receive the COVID vaccine. He repeated, it is a lawful order, adding refusing to do that, absent an approved exemption, puts them in the same potential for punishment as active duty members who refuse the vaccine. The Defense Department in September said that all uniformed personnel must be vaccinated, with varying deadlines for each branch. Oklahoma's new commander for the National Guard had disagreed, saying in a policy memo on November 11th that, quote, no Oklahoma Guardsmen be required to take the COVID-19 vaccine, adding Oklahoma commands will continue to process federal vaccine waivers in accordance with DoD policy. Additionally, no negative administrative or legal action will be taken against Guardsmen who refuse the COVID-19 vaccine. And now for an update on the Astroworld tragedy. The death toll now stands at 10. Family attorney Ben Crump confirmed the death Sunday night. The boy, identified as Ezra Blount, had been in a medically induced coma for days after sustaining severe injuries to his brain, liver, and kidney. He was just 9. The boy's father, Tristan Blount, used the family's GoFundMe page to recount the harrowing details of the accident. He said he had his son on his shoulders when the crowd crushed him until he couldn't breathe and passed out. Blount said he frantically searched for his son after waking up, only to find him at the hospital with severe brain damage and trauma to nearly all his organs. The family is now suing Travis Scott and the festival organizers, alleging that they failed to stop the concert until 40 minutes after the mass casualty event had begun. The Blount family is seeking at least $1 million in damages. Travis Scott and the concert organizers are facing over 90 lawsuits. A Meta company CEO comments on the Astroworld tragedy, saying,
this is something I'll have nightmares about for the rest of my life. I think my team is extremely broken up about it. Seeing so many young people getting CPR at one time is just something no one should have to go through. Even though we're medical professionals, we should be used to it. You can't get used to something like that.
Travis Scott has denied wrongdoing, saying that he was devastated by the tragedy. A criminal investigation into the incident is ongoing. And now, before we end, in some lighter news, it's a magical day in the Potterverse. 20 years ago today, the first Harry Potter movie hit theaters. The world of witchcraft and wizardry came to life on the big screen with Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, kicking off one of the most successful movie franchises ever. Now, there are costumes, toys, theme park experiences, and even hotel rooms inspired by the series. With 8 movies in the full series, people grew up with Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Rupert Grint, aka Harry, Hermione, and Ron. And the 3 are reuniting for a celebration on HBO Max called Return to Hogwarts. That's set to stream on New Year's Day. But what do you think? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and see you soon.